All right. What is going on, everyone? Farzine Vasugian here with you for another episode of Farzcast. Oh boy. A lot of things are just not working on my end. Lovely. The Audacity decided to crash. Let's see if it works now. Yes, it does. There we go. Here we are. Welcome in, guys. Farzine Vasugian here with you. We had all kinds of tech issues before that I don't even think anyone gives a damn about, but oh well, let's just roll with it the way it just happened. Farzine Vasugian here with you for another episode of the Chiefs Zone special edition, bringing on two of my friends here, Zach Stegna and from KCMO 710, Mark Van Sickle. Gentlemen, welcome in. How are you? Happy Super Bowl victory week to both of you.
Say, did we really think we were going to be here celebrating this? I sure didn't.
Yeah. It was a roller coaster.
I always believed, I'm not going to lie, even after the loss to the Raiders, I said, you know what? All they have to do is stop turning the ball over. The defense will keep picking it up, and they will go for it and get to the Super Bowl. And they did that. Now, a lot of people, laughed at me for saying that, but at the same time, I always believed, just like Mahomes always believed.
I respect it, man.
I think, so many ups and downs. And I was kind of talking to Zach about this before we started the comparison Colin Cowherd made. And I've already shared this before, but I'll share it again in a moment here, because I think I learned a lot about this season with this football team, and we need to get into that for sure. Before we move forward, I want to let you guys know this podcast is brought to you by SeatGeek. Go to SeatGeek.com. Get your tickets from there. If you see a green dot next to the ticket prices, that is a good sign. That's a good price you're paying for. Buy those tickets. If you see a red dot, avoid those tickets. That's what I like about SeatGeek. They keep you honest. They let you know if you're getting the best bang for your buck. And if you're a new SeatGeek customer, you can use my promo code FARZINE and you will save $20 off your first purchase from SeatGeek. You want to go watch KU, K-State, Mizzou, Royals baseball coming up very soon. You can use my promo code SeatGeek and save $20 off your first purchase. All right.
Bro, really quick, can I just say something about that? Because I could have gotten a $20 ticket to go to the Miami Dolphins Chiefs playoff game with your code. And that would have been awesome, but I told my wife I wasn't going to leave her and the kids at home, in the freezing temperatures. Yeah. But I did use your code, and I was like, I could totally go for $20. And my wife's like, no, you're staying home.
Listen, I'm Zach and I. We are not married, but that came out wrong.
Yeah, the way you said that, we are not married to anyone or to each other. For those of you worried about that.
What I meant was, anyway, we don't live that style, at least not yet. We might get there. He might get there. I might get, but I know the wife is always the boss in those situations. So, yeah, one of those days I may come across that kind of thing. So, anyway, I did want to get into. Let's just move on. Chiefs win. GOAT conversation, dynasty conversation. They're in full force now. I just feel like at this point, if you're denying, trying to push back against it, you're in denial. Like Patrick Mahomes, this guy has done everything possible in the first 6 years as a starter. Obviously, we're not talking about his first year, 7 years in the NFL total, because he was a backup his first year to Alex Smith. But man, this Chiefs team has just dominated. And I still remember, man, people were saying, oh, they'll figure out Mahomes. And 2021 gets off to a slow start. Okay, they figured him out. He's no longer going to be good. Well, they got pretty damn close to a Super Bowl that year. This year, with all the receivers and all the drops. Oh, okay, well, finally Mahomes has been figured out. He needs Tyreek Hill back. Remember Stephen A. Smith after the Monday Night Football loss to the Eagles? What did he say? Should have paid Tyreek Hill. The Tyreek Hill narrative came back. And what do the Chiefs do? They come back and they win another Super Bowl. They traded Tyreek Hill 23 months ago. And every year since trading Tyreek Hill, they've won the Super Bowl both times. That's the Kansas City Chiefs right now.
Yeah, I think that offseason where we traded him was the most consequential. That's Veach's just masterclass, because he goes from that to parlaying some of those draft picks into absolute studs now on that defensive side of the ball. And built it from the high-flying offense that beat the Niners the first time to the incredible defense we had that beat them this time. Really, you got to tip the cap to Veach across the board. Obviously, you have Mahomes. That's that's a cheat code in and of itself. And I'm not trying to downplay any piece of what Mahomes did there. But yeah, I think Veach, for the roster construction, and then Spags for getting the most out of it on the defensive side of the ball. Both of those guys absolutely deserve the tip of the cap for this one.
McDuffie and Karlaftis, man. I mean, those dudes are ballers. I was a big Karlaftis guy. I thought that they were going to take Karlaftis with their first pick, and McDuffie was just, I mean, from what I heard, he was like one of their top 15 guys. So to see him fall into the 20s, they're like, we got to get him. So, I mean, like you said, Brett Veach, masterclass.
Yeah, and here's Rich's comment about Veach drafting so well. I just want to address this for a moment here because I don't know why, but so many people love to bring up Brett Veach and how he cannot draft a wide receiver. Whenever things are not working for the Chiefs, a lot of people just want to go to Brett Veach, attack him, and bring up his inability to draft a good receiver. Okay, look. Early on in Brett Veach's time as a GM, he had to get the Chiefs out of a hellhole with the salary cap. That was like priority number one. John Dorsey, phenomenal evaluator of talent. That should never be taken away from him. But the way he handled contracts was just horrible. Brett Veach had to take care of that first with the Chiefs. And then when you have a good space, when you're in a good spot with the salary cap, you finally started seeing a lot of these draft picks come up, especially the last couple of drafts where you drafted. I mean, you guys have mentioned a couple of the names already: Karlaftis and McDuffie in the first round. Robert mentioned Leo Chenal in that same draft. Sky Moore, who made an impact last year a little bit in the Super Bowl. Isaiah Pacheco obviously has been monster. Jalen Watson, Josh Williams. I know that this guy hasn't really done much, but even a guy like Nazeed Johnson, who supposedly was in line to start early on in the season, but got hurt early in training camp. Like, these are just so many guys on the team. A lot of Brett Veach draft picks here. Nick Bolton, who scored in last year's Super Bowl. Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith, a lot of these guys are non-first round draft picks either. People want to focus on the wide receiver. Okay, fine. Maybe Brett Veach just hasn't done well with the wide receiver department, but he's done pretty damn well. Yeah, Rashee Rice. Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's his first year, but as Rashee Rice started playing well, that narrative kind of died off. Here's what I want to say, because when I used to work at 610, my boss there told me, he said, look, if you're bad at one thing, be really damn good at the other 9 things, because if you might be really bad at one thing, your boss can't fire you because you're so damn good at the other 9 things that you would be irreplaceable if you were to get let go. And that's kind of what Brett Veach, yes, you're right. Rice has played very well, especially in the second half of the season, but you want to really focus on the wide receiver draft picks. Well, you know what, man? He's been doing so well in all the other spots. And that Tyreek Hill trade, in a weird way, benefited the Chiefs, I think, more than a lot of people realize.
I think you're absolutely right. And let's be honest. I mean, you look at the record in the draft. You've already named a bunch of the names, but even just this past year, he manages to find certainly a serviceable left tackle in the 3rd round. That's a tough position to fill. Be interesting to see if that's what they want to roll with going into next season or not. But certainly a useful swing tackle, if nothing else. The great nickelback in Shamari Connor, and then a couple of developmental guys. We knew Ndike Uzomah wasn't going to be he wasn't going to be Karlaftis coming out his first year, but obviously then Rashee Rice hit it out of the park. That's a pretty darn good hit rate. And even on those second round receivers, he's got McColl, he's got Sky Moore, and now he's got Rashee Rice. 1 out of 3 ain't bad, I guess. And the other 2 got Super Bowl winning touchdowns, so that doesn't suck.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Even though Hardman had a really good rookie year, and then he kind of plateaued. Sky Moore, we really haven't seen the best of him, but they both had touchdowns that literally put them in the lead.
They'll both be great answers to trivia questions someday, if nothing else.
Yeah. So final touchdowns of both of the last 2 Super Bowls go to their 2nd round wide receivers that Veach got.
That's a really good point. I didn't realize that when you put it that way. I must have not realized that. Yeah, no. I mean, the Chiefs, and again, people talk about, the refs and whatnot. Man, the Chiefs last year in the second half weren't all of the touchdown scorers newcomers, because it was in the second half. It was Isaiah Pacheco, it was Sky Moore, and Kadarius Toney. Toney obviously was not a rookie, but was a newcomer because he came during the season that year. And by the way, I mean, what is it with the Chiefs making a trade midseason with a team in East Rutherford, New Jersey, getting their wide receivers to come here and make an impact? Like Mecole Hardman, listen, I don't know what the future holds for Mecole Hardman. This is obviously like a big time high for him, and good on him. He's gone through a lot last year with the injury, which absolutely sucked. But, you know, he came through. The Jets did not use him. And listen, I've thought about this, but I don't know what the narrative is right now. I'd love to know, like, what are New York Jets fans thinking? I don't think they're missing out on a big time player, but that was their player to start the season who caught the touchdown to end the Super Bowl, essentially.
Yeah, but someone had to throw him the ball. I think the Jets have bigger problems.
Oh, well, okay. Yeah, that's a very good point.
Yeah, they've got Aaron Rodgers issues and whoever else is going to be backing him up. I don't know, man.
So they need an offensive line to keep that old man upright is what they need.
Here's the other thing, too, going back to Brett Veach. By the way, I see a lot of questions about free agency and offseason stuff. Let me just say, I really do appreciate those questions. We're just not able to get to those today or this week because we already have a lot on the docket. I'm going to get into offseason, like draft and free agency stuff, probably next week. That would probably be the better time because we got the parade tomorrow. And I'm going to be recapping that on tomorrow night's podcast. So we will get into that at a later time. So not to dismiss or ignore everyone's questions about it. I really do appreciate it. We're just going to say that for another time.
Take the Mahomes approach.
Here's
celebrate until the parade. And
is Travis and Taylor going to get married? I
don't know if you've been consulted on their plans, but I most certainly have. And, you know, they've got me on speed dial. They consult me for these things. Who fucking knows? I'm sorry. I don't know if I can say that. But
yeah, you can say that.
All right, good.
Who
knows?
Sources.
My sources are saying that they are very serious. They're enjoying their time together, and in the off season, they're really going to get even more serious, having more time spent together. And you know, they might get engaged before next football season.
My sources are telling me that this is a setup by the left, and it was all done for politics and all that other conspiracy theory crap.
Oh yeah, they're going to meet up at the White House.
The earth is flat. By the way, I love how like Andy Reid was asked about that in the press conference last week, and Mahomes was on CNN last night, and he looks stoned as shit. And the interviewer was like, Patrick, there are a lot of people who think that you guys were here because of political reasons for Taylor Swift. He's like, yeah, there's a lot of wild stuff. I just stay away from it. And the anchor, I don't know her name, bless her. She seems like she's good at what she does. She's like, it's very wise. I feel like she wanted like a long, elaborate answer because obviously CNN wanted their angle with that. But I was like, really? You asked that?
He's smart enough not to walk into that buzzsaw.
Yeah, Pat, go ahead.
On the record, I don't think he was high. He's just like me, and when he's really sleepy, his eyes kind of get a little bit squinty, and he's kind of, you know, on an hour and a half of sleep. So I don't think he was high, but he probably looked high.
A lot of his pictures, he just looks like that, and a lot of people just wonder, like, what's happening? What's going on here? So I do want to go back to this whole like GOAT and dynasty conversation because a lot of people push back against that. Now I just think you see people who are like angry or jealous about it at this point. This is the best 5-year stretch in NFL history. That is a fact. If they do three-peat, and I know that's a big conversation, we'll get into that later. You just can't even say anything about it at this point. But look, Colin Cowherd said this, I think it was right before or right after the Buffalo Bills loss. He talked about how dynasties are not perfect. He brought up the Patriots. In fact, the Tom Brady teams he compared this team to way before the playoffs. The 2014 Patriots, the 2017 Patriots, and the 2021 Bucks team. Well, what do all three of those teams have in common? They both got destroyed by the Chiefs in the regular season, and they all went on to win the Super Bowl. Unfortunately, the Bucks team was against the Chiefs in Super Bowl 55, but the point is, all three of those teams that Brady was a part of, they were not pretty. In fact, it was very ugly early on. The Monday Night Football game at Arrowhead, where the Chiefs broke the noise record, the Patriots got destroyed. And if you turned on sports talk radio in Boston, their own fan base, they were ready to ship out both Brady and Belichick. And then what happens? They win 3 more Super Bowls in New England. So, look, I know there was a lot of doubt with a lot of people on this football team, personnel-wise, coaching-wise. I think what I've just learned, and I mentioned 2021, the rough 3-4 start with Mahomes leading the NFL in interceptions at that time. But what I've come to learn is that things are not going to always be pretty. You can be the best team in the NFL. You can, be the team that, holds that Lombardi trophy to end the season, but leading up to that, there can be a lot of rough patches. We've seen that time and time again with this football team. Even 2019, Zach, you and I did the podcast. That Titans game, I had a lot to say about Andy Reid after that one. And, I think at this point, I'm just learning, even if the Chiefs have another similar season next year, let's just slow down. Let's wait for them to flip the switch, because they're not going to roll over and quit easily. That's not this team's DNA.
Well, I think that's the thing that this season really proves too, is that they do have that switch that they can flip. Because I think I think it lingered in the back of everyone's mind, even as they were ruining Christmas with the way they played against the Raiders. I think there was always the understanding of we still have all these pieces. If they put it all together, we could still have something here. But I think just the longer the season went on, I think we were expecting more and more evidence to show itself in the regular season, and it just didn't, for one reason or another. And now we know, I think it will genuinely be different the next time that we have a little lull like we had this year, because we do have the evidence of this postseason run to say yep, these guys do absolutely have the ability to flip the switch, and playoff Pat is absolutely a thing.
Yeah, as long as they're winning the AFC West and getting in the dance, they're going to have a chance to go to the Super Bowl and win it, as long as Patrick Mahomes is there, as long as Andy Reid's the head coach. I mean, like you said, their worst finish is AFC Championship game overtime loss. In all 6 years that Mahomes has been the starter, that's the
most insane stat.
That's a dynasty. Yeah. That's a dynasty, and they've won 3 Super Bowls, been to 4. I mean, this is as dynastic as you can get.
Yeah, I mean, every year you've been with Mahomes, your worst year is in a championship appearance. Statistically speaking, I guess offensively, this is your worst year. And it led you to a Super Bowl. Last year was a rebuilding year. This year was a down year. Both Super Bowl wins. I don't know. I guess we need more rebuilding and down years, because shit, man, that seems to work out.
Imagine what we're going to look like when we're actually good.
Yeah. And if they win 3 in a row, that's never been done before. So that'll be something that Tom Brady can never say that he did if they win it next year.
Well, let's get into that, because I honestly have not put a lot of thought into this. But it is getting a lot of talk with national sports talk radio stations with the whole 3-peat thing. I'm trying to just enjoy this moment here, because shit, man, my reaction to that touchdown right there, I was just like, holy shit, they did it. They actually did it against all the road playoff. Oh, how will Patrick play a road playoff game? They won them all, and they won the Super Bowl. The road games. Walk-off overtime game. They were able to do that. So my whole thing is with 3-peating. Listen, repeating is very difficult. We just had a 19-year drought of no repeats. The Chiefs could have done it a couple of years ago. I already alluded to the Super Bowl 55 game. We know how that went. Repeating alone is very, very difficult to do. I feel like with all of the media already talking about 3-peating and debating on that, listen, here's what's going to happen. If the Chiefs do it, they're amazing. Mahomes is God, all that stuff. If they don't, and if they finally, exit before the AFC title game, Oh, Mahomes is a fraud. He was never good. It's like even Pat McAfee was asked this question on ESPN once. I think it was First Take or whatever. And they were asking him if the Chiefs lose to the 49ers in the Super Bowl, do we give Mahomes a pass? He's like, this is the craziest question ever. Of course. He's either made it to the Super Bowl or the AFC title game every year. No one else has been able to do that in their first 6 years starting. So we know, listen, let me just put it like this, because if the Chiefs, and specifically Mahomes, if he continues to keep reaching the Super Bowl, guess what? He's going to lose another Super Bowl or two. Tom Brady went to 10 and lost 3. So you'll have your moments. Tom Brady did, but Tom Brady always found ways to come back on top. So I don't know. This whole three-peat thing is just kind of weird to me. Number one, I'm trying to enjoy the moment now. Number two, I just feel like people are setting themselves up for a narrative to push back against Mahomes. Do you guys feel that way? Have you guys even paid attention to that?
I have not. I've not heard any of that. Mahomes, I've heard his interviews, and he's talking about he wants to be the first one that does it. I just feel like if Mahomes is putting his mind to it, that's something that might actually just happen. But if he doesn't make the Super Bowl next year, or if the team doesn't make the Super Bowl next year, of course it's going to be a failure because that is now the standard, but I don't think it's going to knock him off of any sort of, trajectory to be the greatest quarterback of all time.
No, I couldn't agree with you more on that. Like, if you look at, the whole GOAT debate, right? And there's a longevity piece to that. That's just the nature of it. And so that's the only thing he's missing right now is the longevity piece. Pace wise, he's absolutely right there with Brady. But at this point, if you look just Super Bowl wise, not age wise, Brady won his first 3 Super Bowls, took 10 years off, essentially, and then went and won 3 more at the end. That's as long as Mahomes doesn't do that, I think then that actually puts him kind of ahead of pace. So, I don't think it's nuts to suggest that, he could easily do it. It's just a question of, is he going to be Michael Jordan and, be the absolute, greatest of all time, when it comes to rings as well? Or is he going to be Steph Curry as well, which, completely changed the way the game is played, won plenty of titles, but not quite that,
Yeah, it's just interesting to me because this whole deal, like, look at, again, I know people want to keep making the GOAT comparison to Tom Brady here. And obviously Tom Brady's phenomenal, 7 Super Bowls and 3 more appearances. But Tom Brady did go 10 years between Super Bowl wins at one point. And, again, like during that stretch, the topic came up during the tail end of that 10-year drought. People wanted him and Belichick gone. But listen, he lost to Eli Manning twice into a backup in the Super Bowl. Okay. It's never going to be perfect, but you just can't, you can't deny Mahomes' trajectory, Zach. You kind of were alluding to that. And I heard someone call into Mad Dog Sports Radio today, and there was a caller who goes, the GOAT conversation is silly because Brady is way ahead and Mahomes does not have the longevity. And you just said that, Zach. But the caller did go on to say, no one is saying Mahomes is not the most talented, because I think Dan Orlovsky was broadcasting the Super Bowl on ESPN for international audiences. And at the end, when when the team was celebrating, Dan Orlovsky just said he's the most talented quarterback I've ever seen. I at this point, it's like, he's doing. I know the comment came up last year. What was the term? Street ball or something like that? Like Mahomes playing street ball. I know a lot of people took that the wrong way. I don't think that was meant to be in a negative way. I think the purpose of that comment was he's just doing things differently. He has a style that's very unique that we've never seen before in NFL history. He's kind of revolutionized that position a little bit. And he's, again, like, teams cannot figure it out. I remember 2018 or 2019. He's behind the line of scrimmage trying to find a receiver in the end zone because the Chiefs are in the red zone here. He's like near the sidelines about to just go out of bounds. And at the very last second, he just throws a sidearm to somebody in the end zone. And all the Chargers players are like doing their arms like this, like, what were we supposed to do? So
I think that was a Chris Conley touchdown.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think people are still like trying to accept the fact that this guy is doing so much in a short amount of time and is doing things that no one's ever seen before.
Yeah, he's genuinely changed the way the quarterback position's played. I mean, I would put it this way. So we've got, a draft coming up. You've got two quarterbacks sitting at the top of it. You've got Drake May from North Carolina, 6'4", traditional drop back passer, can move a little bit, but, mobile's not necessarily the biggest part of his game. He's considered a Justin Herbert light, right? And then you've got Caleb Williams from USC, who is, kind of a mini Mahomes. And, few years, before Mahomes comes on the scene, a quarterback like Caleb Williams, he's probably a late first round pick at best. Whereas now he's number 1 overall. Drake May has always been there. Like that quarterback archetype has always been there and probably isn't going anywhere anytime soon. But, Mahomes has broken that mold. Like you look at all of the, freezing cold takes that have popped back up, in the aftermath of winning this Super Bowl. It's all of Mahomes draft evaluations, stuff like that. Like, oh, he doesn't have the footwork. He doesn't play the position, this sort of way. He's too improvisational. It's like, now that's what everybody wants. So, yeah, he's just different. And I think that, I don't think there's any doubt that he firmly belongs in that GOAT conversation. And, personally, I just hope that it's only a matter of time before he gets there. Because the other thing that's kind of, bears mentioning here is that, we don't have any Spygates, to reference in terms of Super Bowl wins either. So I'm not, not trying to put that on Brady. Like, I don't think that was him so much as it was his coach, but nonetheless, that'll be, one of the arguments that gets made down the line whenever the numbers are way closer together.
Mark, did you want to add to that?
No, I thought that was great. I pretty much agreed with everything you just said.
I do want to touch on the Hall of Fame here because, Hall of Fame resumes, I think, are just going through the roof here. We know even with a loss, Reed, Kelsey, Mahomes, they're lost.
First ballot.
I was just going to say, for sure, first ballot. Listen, this was a huge deal when Terrell Owens didn't get in as a first ballot. I don't get too carried away with that. I do think sometimes like there are head scratchers like this year with Andre Johnson over Torrey Holt. That's a little weird. But at the end of the day, if you get in, you get in. There are very few people who can get into the Hall of Fame. But those three, even with a loss, were already locks for the Hall of Fame. I do think with a win, it definitely helped Jones, Chris Jones, that is. And I think this guy's name has just joined the conversation is Steve Spagnuolo, who obviously I still think his most impressive coaching game in the Super Bowl was the Brady game, preventing the Patriots from going 19-0. But I thought this game was very similar, where he drew up blitzes, and man, that 3rd and 4 play right there to blitz with McDuffie swatting the pass, that was huge because who was it? It wasn't Ray McCloud. It was Jawan Jennings. He kind of had an open lane right there to get the football in. If they get that ball, boy, they kick a field. They kill the time and they kick a field goal to win. And they pressured Brock Purdy. Here's the other thing too with Christian McCaffrey. It wasn't perfect, but they also made some very key stops against him when they needed him. Spags is a guy who 100% needs to go into the Hall of Fame. Like, this is not even a debate anymore.
Yeah, I think it just comes down to how they choose to treat assistant coaches and career assistant coaches in that regard. I'm sure that realistically he is going to make a very good case for it, because frankly, if you look at, I forget where the stat came from, so I'm sure someone can come up with it there, but there was like the 3 most dominant statistical teams coming into the Super Bowl that lost. So the ones that were the absolute favorite, the best looking teams on paper, going into the Super Bowl, who ended up losing it in the Super Bowl. Top 3 losses were all to Steve Spagnuolo defenses. And that was the Niners and Eagles, as well as that Brady team. The perfect season that he ruined. And, I think that kind of speaks for itself resume wise. I mean, that's, that is what it is. Just because he failed with a, Rams organization as a head coach that was in nowhere, in no sort of shape to, set him up for success when he had his one run as a head coach. I mean, yeah, I don't think you could totally fault a guy for that. I'm sure they will make an exception for assistant coaches moving forward, because I'm sure there are plenty of other career assistants who are equally deserving that will now get their shine because of this conversation.
100%. Dick Vermeil said in his Hall of Fame speech, he was actually bringing up Al Saunders. And right after he mentioned his name, he goes, you know what? Assistant coaches, they're going to get in the Hall of Fame someday. And I really hope that the Hall of Fame starts considering that. They have to. It's kind of criminal that
Al Saunders belongs in that conversation. Frankly, Gunther Cunningham might too.
Yeah. Mark, did you have anything you want to add with that? What other guys do you think from this current team, or maybe, guys who you like? Tyreek Hill, for sure, going to be a Hall of Famer. I mean, who else from this run, do you think gets into the Hall of Fame?
It's really early, but Trent McDuffie is going to be a guy that I'm going to be keeping an eye on. He doesn't have the stats like the interceptions right now. I don't even think
he doesn't have an interception yet.
Yeah,
no,
so
that's wild.
He doesn't have any interceptions, but you look at what he does to opposing players. I mean, he allowed 2 catches for 9 yards, I believe I saw on Deebo Samuel.
Yep.
And then, I mean, he's in year 2, so he still has room to even get better. So I think he's going to be a lockdown guy. L'Jarius Sneed, he is a lockdown guy. If he does this for like 3 or 4 more years, he's going to be a guy that his name will be up there.
Yeah, he has a couple more years like this one. It's absolutely a discussion.
Yeah.
Like, that guy didn't give up a touchdown until the Bills game in the playoffs. Like, that's insane.
Yeah.
So crazy. I don't think the offense really has anybody else outside of Mahomes right now. I don't know. It's hard for offensive linemen. Joe Thuney's been really solid throughout his career, but I don't know, for offensive line, it's tough.
I think he's got like 4. I think Thuney has like 4 or 5 Super Bowl wins at this point. I can't remember how many he won with New England, but man, he's been a monster. Yeah. Yeah. I think Humphrey.
I think he's been a perennial Pro Bowler too, which I know at offensive line, that is one of those things that does count when it comes to Hall of Fame bids.
Yeah, especially since a lot of their stats are not public. Like, I mean, you would have to pay premium for PFF, which isn't as expensive as it used to be. And plus some of the offensive line stats can differ from different media outlets that track those kinds of things. It's weird. Stats
and the most commonly tracked ones are when they screw up.
Yeah, the Stats Hosted and PFF, they oddly have different sacks allowed numbers, and I don't get it. It's weird, but neither here nor there. You know who else I think really deserves consideration? Because I think Justin Tucker. I know he's not very well liked amongst good old Chiefs Kingdom right now, but he's the most accurate kicker in NFL history. I think he's got a spot in Canton one day. The second most accurate kicker in NFL history is Harrison Butker, and he really raised his percentage with only 2 misses this entire year. One of them was with a deflated football, so I guess that happens. But nonetheless,
in New England,
yeah, imagine that.
I agree.
I mean, think about this with Butker. He had a game-winning field goal in the AFC title game last year. He had a game-winning Super Bowl last year, a game-winning field goal last year in the Super Bowl, a game-tying kick to send the game into overtime this year. And he's been called upon a lot this year because the offense has stalled at times, if we're being honest here. He has really delivered in the regular season and in the playoffs. Second postseason in a row he's done that. Again, I know it's an uphill battle for these special teams guys, but I think if anyone can make a case and do it, it's Butker. I really do.
And he got the longest field goal in Super Bowl history right after the guy on the Niners did it. So, I mean, he's got that on the resume. And I talked about this probably about a month and a half, maybe 2 months ago on Twitter. I said that he's on the Mount Rushmore of kickers in NFL history. So if they're letting kickers into the Hall of Fame, which I think they have a couple kickers.
They've got a couple. I mean, the Chiefs have one, Jan Stenerud.
That's right. So
and then Vinatieri, I'm sure, and I'm guessing there's a few others, but those 2 I know for sure.
Yeah. Some people, I don't know. Some people were throwing some names out there, but I think he's in the top 4. Justin Tucker is going to be in there. But yeah,
Oh, never mind. There's a lot of them in there.
It's automatic.
Here's what's funny. You mentioned how Butker broke the record 30 minutes after Cooley, I think is his name, Jake Cooley. The 49ers. What was that?
Jake Moody?
Moody. Okay, my bad. You know what's funny is last year, I think it was Matthew Wright, because the Chiefs had a couple of different backup kickers while Butker was injured. Matthew Wright had the record for longest field goal in Chiefs history. And then a week later, Butker broke that record when he came back. It's like he just has this weird thing where he can like take a record from someone right away. I don't know. He's got a knack for that. So that is pretty cool.
Funny thing, Fars, you say that because my daughter, she's a big fan of Butker. She's a soccer player. She likes watching Butker make field goals.
Yeah.
And when Moody made that long kick, she goes, "That was an NFL record." And I said, "Just wait, Butker's going to break it." And then he did it like not very long later. And I could say that I called that one in my living room. But, I mean, yeah, the way that he could just step up and kick it from anywhere, especially in a dome like that, he could have probably made a 65-yarder.
Yeah.
I mean, they were talking about he made a 70 in warmups.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, they were mentioning that. And I think he even hit the crossbar in like one of them, but was able to get it the second time. That's crazy. But I do want to discuss this overtime thing because this has gotten some attention here because apparently the 49ers players were not aware of the rules, which is a big coaching concern. So here's what's funny about that. If the 49ers were not aware of these overtime rules specifically for the playoffs, a part of me wishes they scored a touchdown in overtime because I think you would have seen a few of their players run onto the field. Here's another thing I wish that would have happened. I wish. Okay, so people were freaking out on the internet. They thought if time ran out that the game was over. And I'll be honest, I was one of those people. But then again, like I don't fucking play in the NFL. I'm not a coach. Why would I need to know these things?
Especially since they just changed the rule after the 13 seconds game.
Very funny. Yeah, imagine that. Because of us, of all teams. I wanted to see the clock run to zero because I kind of have a feeling there's at least one 49ers player who would have like ran onto the field celebrating. Could you imagine that? Like if the clock actually hit zero for the first overtime period and like, I don't know, like Brock Purdy just like ran onto the field. Like, yes, we did it. 0 seconds, we won. And then you go back and then 2 minutes later, Mecole Hardman scores that touchdown. That would have been like 2.0 of the Super Bowl 54 where they all celebrated in the end zone. I would have been like, this would have been like 10 times funnier, but no, we never got that. But seriously, like as a coach, I'm sure Shanahan knew all the rules. Drew Tranquill keeps talking about how they went over everything. How do you not tell your players the rules of overtime? Again, like I don't know. I don't get it.
Again, I'm just a dunce over here in a Chiefs hat, but I knew that if the Niners scored a touchdown, the Chiefs would get a chance to score a touchdown themselves.
I think a lot
likely go for two, if they needed to, and not give the Niners the ball back. That's kind of what I thought after the coin toss, and I was wondering why the Niners didn't kick off. I was wondering why they received it. So, but like you said about the end of overtime, I was one of those guys. I thought that if the Niners were ahead at the end of the first one, I thought that was it. I didn't realize that it could go into a second quarter of overtime because the Chiefs still had their possession. I didn't realize that they got the entire possession. So
yeah, a lot of people did not know that. I did not know that.
Yeah, that part's super weird. Like
I was yelling at the TV, call a timeout. Call a timeout. I almost lost my voice yelling at the TV. But, I mean, I'm glad they knew what they were doing. Like you said, Drew Tranquill said they had PowerPoints every week. Like in the playoffs, they had a PowerPoint on what to do in overtime. So Mahomes knew, you know what, if the time runs out, we're going to be second down on the other end of the field or however it was going to go.
And I think that's one of those things that is just an absolute, like, I mean, we talk about Andy Reid as the offensive, genius that he is. And he is. I mean, he's, been that reputation is completely earned for his entire career. But one of the things that he was, especially when he first came to Kansas City, one of the things that he was run out of Philly for was the inability to manage the clock and, the game management side of things, if you will. And to see, Andy Reid's evolution from the guy who first came into Kansas City with all those clock management reputation issues to the guy who is so thorough and understood exactly the situational football aspect of things and was drilling it into his guys. Like that's just one of those things that you don't see a whole lot. That's not something that gets talked about. It's such a little minute detail that doesn't make Sports Center. That's not a huge deal. I mean, it makes Sports Center, I guess, if you don't, because here's looking at you, Shanahan. But realistically, like that's one of those things that we're so freaking lucky to have this guy. He's the oldest coach in the league now that we've got Belichick and Carroll that retired or were kind of nudged out into retirement. Because let's be honest, they both were. But he's got that wisdom to him at this point. The wisdom that comes with the experience that, especially over the last few years, we've been able to develop here in Kansas City, which is, I think that those little things have a lot to do with the fact that we're sitting here talking about potential dynasty mode.
Yeah.
Like those have as much to do with dynasty mode as Mahomes, absolute cannon for a right arm and uncanny ability to escape the pocket whenever it's breaking down.
Yeah. I mean, just wild stuff. You know what I just thought of too? I think Andy Reid was there when it happened because there was an Eagles game several years ago that ended in a tie, and evidently Donovan McNabb had no idea that a game could end in a tie. So I think that was like kind of an embarrassing moment for Andy Reid, and you see it this week. It's like, okay, every single Chiefs player appears to have they were aware of everything. So yeah, it's just I'm still kind of befuddled over the fact that a professional team in the Super Bowl, the second best team in the NFL, I guess, had no idea about the overtime rules. That's it's kind of mind boggling to me because I put it on the screen already. I think Bob mentioned there are a lot of fans that kind of know the rules. And listen, there's some really weird rules in the NFL that I'm sure a lot of players don't know, like the drop kick field goal. Listen, there are a lot of things that I'm sure a lot of players don't know, but that right there, the overtime rule, I feel like is one you have to just know. You just have to.
Yeah, I mean, in their defense, it has changed a couple of times just in the span of their careers. Assuming they aren't rookies this year. I do sort of empathize with where they're at, but at the same time, yeah, you're absolutely right. Like they're professionals getting paid to do this, so you might want to know that. And really, I think that's just as much on the coaches as it is anything else.
I got a question for you guys. Do you guys feel like Tony Romo ruined the moment at the end?
Ruined? I think that might be a bit much. Would it have been nice if he had sat back and let the moment do its thing? Yeah. There's something to be said for, as an announcer, knowing when to shut up. But ruined? I mean, no. We won. We just repeated in the Super Bowl. There wasn't nothing ruined in that moment.
Because here's my thing. I think I know all the complaints about Tony Romo and whatnot, and we can probably do an entire podcast on Tony Romo. I think, in general, I still remember the very first time he started broadcasting, he was kind of flexing on Jim Nantz and the audience. He's like, Jim, they're going to throw a fade on the right here. They're going to run to the left. I bet you $10 they're going to go straight up the middle here. And it's whatever he was predicting happened. I'm like, this guy probably needs to be a defensive coordinator somewhere. If you can see all of that happening, you probably need to be a defensive coordinator somewhere. I still remember when the Chiefs lost to the Patriots in the AFC Championship game, there was a huge deal made about how Romo could just see everything coming. And I think in that press conference leading up to the Super Bowl, the CBS crew did a press conference, and Romo was asked, he's like, how did you know all of this? And Bob Sutton didn't, which anyway, former offensive coordinator for the Chiefs and also former Jayhawks head coach, glory years, Charlie Weiss. He does a show on SiriusXM NFL radio. I don't know if you guys heard this, and I'm not allowed to play the audio because I don't have the rights to it, but I'll read you the quote. He lashed out at Tony Romo. I've never seen another analyst like a Charlie Weiss go off on another analyst before, because usually these guys try to be there for one another. Anyway, here's a quote. Jim Nantz had already said jackpot, and that should have been the end of the conversation. I listened to Tony Romo ruin the moment. Just shut up and let us savor the moment. Just be quiet. And then, they kind of get away from the topic. And then 5 minutes later, Charlie Weiss brings it back up and he says, I try to watch the game and not let the announcers ruin the game for me. There are announcers I really enjoy listening to, but then there's announcers who, if I have to listen to them, I would rather go to the bathroom and throw up. Listen, Charlie Weiss is kind of weird. Like I remember his co-host was bringing up the Manning cast and wanted to talk about that. And Charlie Weiss like, no, yeah, I'm bored when I watch it. Jesus Christ. Okay. Listen, let me just say this about Tony Romo. I actually like him as a broadcaster. Is he annoying sometimes? Yes. But I think he's got a very good, he's got a great knowledge for the game. He really, really does. And by the way, I need to push back on another narrative because I know I'm going in a rabbit hole here. The idea that someone sucked, like Dan Orlovsky or Ryan Leaf, why should we ever take their comments seriously? Seriously is like the dumbest. It's the dumbest thing ever. I remember Tim Grunhard lash out at Patrick Mahomes after the Christmas game against the Raiders, and people were pushing back against him. They're like, dude, you've never won a Super Bowl. So what? He's Tim Grunhard. He knows the sport. And even if you're Ryan Leaf, whose career never panned out the way you would have liked for it to pan out, that doesn't mean you don't have a good knowledge of the sport. One of the better broadcasters, in my opinion, when it comes to talk radio among former players is Brady Quinn. He's been doing it for years, and I think he's done a great job of it. But anyway, I know I'm getting off topic here. I just don't know, like, me personally, as a fan that had a rooting interest, a serious interest in the game, I was too busy celebrating, hugging, kissing my family. Like, I did not even pay attention to Tony Romo. Anyway, I know I went on there for a long time. Mark, do you have any thoughts on that?
That's exactly what I was going to say. In the moment, I'm kind of sad that I missed the jackpot comment because that's Vegas. That's like a classic moment from Nance.
Yeah.
But I didn't even hear what Romo said after Nance. I didn't hear what Nance said. I didn't hear what Romo said because I was screaming in my living room with my family. And every time that I've gone back, I've watched that Hardman pass probably, I'm going to say over 50 times now, but I have not had the sound on. It's just been on my phone, like scrolling through and watching it. So I still haven't heard what Tony Romo said. So I guess I don't even know what the controversy is, or if he was just talking to talk.
He was just giving his analysis. Like he basically the touchdown happened. Everyone's celebrating. It's the Super Bowl, obviously, and he decides to quickly go into analysis mode. That's it.
Okay.
It wasn't that bad.
Yeah. So I don't have a huge problem with that. Like I said, I was just celebrating, going crazy. Couldn't believe that Hardman caught the winning touchdown. So I was in my head just going through all that. So I'll go back and listen to what Romo had to say, and probably won't hate on him at all.
Okay, I just want to say something because Bob just said he's a hater. I think you're referring to Tony Romo. Look, I just need to say something because I still remember Joe Buck in the 2014 World Series. Royals fans were sick of him because he was loving on Madison Bumgarner. Yet
that's one way to put it. Yeah.
In San Francisco, they feel like he was cheering for the Royals. I was about to say the Chiefs. Joe Buck has this really weird perception that Mark, you're a Seattle Kraken fan. Let's say it's the Kraken versus the Vegas Golden Knights. I'm a Vegas Golden Knights fan. You're a Seattle Kraken fan, and Joe Buck's calling that game. Vegas Golden Knights fans will say, "Oh, he's rooting for the Kraken," and Kraken fans will say, "No, he's rooting for the Golden Knights." I don't understand. Joe Buck in his Twitter bio, it used to say, "I'm rooting against the team you cheer for." It's like he even knew it. Tony Romo, Chiefs fans think Romo hates the Chiefs, but there are a lot of Chiefs haters who think, I say Chiefs haters, but just non-Chiefs fans that say that Tony Romo loves the Chiefs. I actually agree. Like, Tony Romo has nothing but great things to say about Patrick Mahomes. At the end of the day, you have two quarterbacks. You have two teams you've got to talk about. You can't just be praising one guy all the time. I think people forget that. Yeah.
It's just a silly narrative, let's be honest. Like, it's of all the things that people choose to get upset about.
Yeah, there for Buck, I think he just loves seeing greatness, and in the moment, I saw what Madison Bumgarner did, and that was incredible. I hated it because I was cheering for the Royals. Yeah. If Mahomes is doing what he does, and I'm loving it, Romo's loving it, the other team's fans are hating it, what he's saying about Mahomes being great on those final 2 drives. But I could see it, on the other hand, when they were playing the Bills, he really sounded like he wanted Josh Allen to get that big win. So I can see it from the Chiefs' perspective too. Chiefs fans being like, oh man, he just wanted Josh Allen and the Bills to win, which I don't know if that's true or not, but you could hear him getting excited when Josh Allen would make a play. But I think it's just because he likes
Mr. January
watching good quarterbacks. Yeah, he likes watching good quarterbacks in the playoffs.
Well, I think it has to be. I mean, you put yourself in that guy's shoes, right? Like it has to be a little bit more fun, rooting for the Bills in that situation, because it's such a better story of like, oh, did they finally get over the hump? Is this really going to be their year? I mean, the Chiefs are down. The Bills haven't been able to get past them. There's a lot to be said for that narrative and the kind of underdog role, like that everyone tends to root for. Like, I mean, as Chiefs fans, I think we've got a lot of experience rooting as the underdog. I mean, realistically, 3 straight Super Bowls that we've won, we were the underdog in. But also, like, just because those of us who have been fans since before the Mahomes era, remember what it's like to be an actual underdog, where you are probably going to get your teeth kicked in some creative, humiliating fashion. I can understand empathizing with that guy and wanting to, see that guy win. But, I think that, if we're worried about who the announcer is, quote unquote, rooting for, like, you got bigger problems, man. Like, I don't know how else to help you.
Yeah, and listen, I know a lot of people are very, here in KC, partial towards Kevin Harlan for very obvious reasons. I mean, he's from here.
He's the best.
He's great already, but
he's also the phone book sound exciting.
He has actually done that before. Yes.
Has he really?
I'm calling both games.
He was the voice of both the Chiefs and the Jayhawks. So I know people, and plus his color analyst is Trent Green. So you got 2 former Chiefs. And you just don't get a lot of Kevin Harlan games because the Chiefs are a top tier team. This year they took a step back, so they had some of the B team, C tier announcers, but neither here nor there. Do you guys have like a favorite broadcaster? I've always liked Gus Johnson, especially like college basketball when games are close. I mean, Gus Johnson's always fun to listen to.
Oh, college basketball wise, Jay Bilas is in a class of his own. I mean, I know he's the color guy, but God, I love Jay Bilas. Even if he's a Duke guy.
I mean, you guys took my college basketball ones for sure. The knowledge that Jay Bilas has, the excitement that Gus Johnson has. Even for football, Gus Johnson, when he called the Red River rivalry with Oklahoma and Texas, and Dicker, the kicker, for the win. Like, the way that he emphasized it so perfectly, Gus Johnson's amazing. And then, Kevin Harlan. I mean, I listen a lot on Monday nights. I'm driving around, so sometimes I'll hear what's going on my drive home before I get home for Monday Night Football. And he's just going crazy about one thing or the other. Like one time there was a streaker and, he goes crazy. There was a cat on the field one time and he starts calling, he's at the 30, he's at the 20, he's at the 15, the 10, the 5, and he gets into the end zone. Who's going to find him? Who's going to get him? So like, he just goes crazy. Like, I love that.
Yeah, that's funny. I still remember the calling both games part because I was in Vegas for that one. There's a Chiefs bar in Vegas called Blue Diamond Saloon. If you guys ever go there for a game, definitely worth checking out. It was weird because it's obviously a sports bar. So they had the Chiefs game on the big TV, but on like one of the smaller TVs, they had the Dolphins game. So, and in a sports bar, it's kind of hard to hear the announcers because it's loud and everything. But I'll never forget Ryan Fitzpatrick threw the touchdown pass in that one against the Patriots. It was louder for the Ryan Fitzpatrick touchdown pass than any of the other touchdowns the Chiefs had. And I think McCole Hardman had a kick return touchdown in that same game too. So, Joshua says Dickie V. Yeah. Dickie V is a legend.
He's iconic. It is time for him to be done, I think, but he is an absolute icon.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it just kind of, it is time, but the game, we hear this a lot in like sports the game gets past them. So you know who I've always really liked is Joe Rogan when he does UFC fights. And listen, I get it. He's on pay-per-view, but he kind of says things like, that might be a little PG or PG-13, maybe rated R. But it's like, he's just like blunt and honest about those kinds of things. But, obviously with over-the-air TV, you can't say the same thing, which is kind of unfortunate. I mean, listen, with the parabolic microphones, you can hear players talking shit and it comes through the TV sometimes. So I don't know. People forget that sometimes, but all right. Last question I did want to ask here, going back to the Chiefs team, and we'll sign off on this. Obviously, the receivers, they were a big topic of a discussion this year. Mecole Hardman and MVS, they both came through and scored. Do you guys think they come back next year? Because it's so easy to think emotionally, like, hey, they came through, they stepped up, and they scored in the Super Bowl. But the overall body of work, you got to think about that as well going into the offseason. MVS does have a big cap hit coming up as well. Mark, I'll go to you first. Do you think both of those or either of those or neither of those come back?
This is so tough because, I mean, even at the end of December, I would have said no on both of them, which means I should probably say no on both of them. But when you see what they did in the playoffs, there is a little bit of that. I don't know. They're just like I don't know which other receivers might also be cut. Like maybe Kadarius Toney, or like if they cut Toney, maybe they'll bring Hardman back, type of a thing. I could see him drafting somebody at pick 32, and then maybe they don't.
For sure.
Maybe they don't need MVS. I don't know when the dates are for when they have to be cut by to save the cap. I don't know all that off the top of my head.
It'll be like middle of March, somewhere around there.
Middle of March, so before the draft. So if they do cut him, then we know they're going receiver early, most likely. But I could see him bringing him back. It just depends on what they need to do for making room for maybe Snead and Chris Jones and whatever else they're planning to do. So I wouldn't be – I'll say I wouldn't be mad if they're both gone. I also wouldn't be mad if they're both here.
Zach, how do you feel?
So I think that with Mecole, I think that it's just a question of price. I would imagine the market for him is not going to be that heavy. I mean, I think last year, even last offseason, I think he got like a 1-year, $4 million deal or something like that from the Jets. I don't know how much the Jets, how much of that they ate versus us whenever we traded for him. But I that's a long way of saying I don't think his cap hit's going to be that bad. With MVS, I mean, here's the hard part. We save $12 million against the cap. I was just fiddling with the numbers on the other screen here. We saved $12 million against the cap if we do cut him. And as much as he was a stud down the stretch, dude's 30. This is a loaded receiver class. And if you put some of that $12 million towards retaining a Chris Jones or a L'Jarius Sneed, I think that's probably a better use of the money. I absolutely have nothing but respect for the way that MVS, as I was very much one of those people who was, throw the bum out, especially after that Eagles game, right? Like I was firmly in camp, get rid of MVS, really light just about everything in the receiver room, not named Rashee Rice on fire and let it go. Like I was 100% there. And the fact that, he played the way he did in the playoffs, like I have nothing but respect for the the work he did there. But it comes down to the economics of it when it's all said and done. And that's a pretty big issue, especially as we have Mahomes, who I'm sure they'll do some, restructuring and fiddling with his contract too. But as of right now on paper, he's almost a 60 million cap hit. It's like 58 something.
Listen, I've said this so many times. I don't care if you've won 3 Super Bowls or if you haven't won a Super Bowl. The quarterbacks are way overpaid right now. And look, Mahomes is not the only one who needs to consider restructuring if, for the betterment of the team. Jawan Taylor just did not live up to expectations this year. I don't think. And I know people are mad he didn't get called for a holding penalty in this Super Bowl, but go cry me a river.
He got enough.
But
he built up a big enough body of work during the year. Thank you. He didn't need another one in the Super Bowl.
Yeah. I think you got to consider restructuring him. And then, yeah, I do agree with MVS. If you do let him go, it probably helps your team a lot, especially if you want to keep this defense together. Keeping Chris Jones is going to be insane. And by the way, look who's eligible for new deals right now: Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith, Nick Bolton. I mean, I don't know how those guys are gonna go forward with this.
Creed gets
they probably want new deals. I think the only way you can make it work, and again, I haven't done the numbers on this. Zach, you're better about this than I am. If you do sign Chris Jones to like a 3-year deal, you might need to make it more front loaded contract wise, and then after that first year, okay, you can afford to extend all those other guys I mentioned, and also re-sign L'Jarius Sneed at the same time. Listen, this is going to be Brett Veach's toughest offseason, 100%. And these are good problems to have. When you're a championship team, when you've been drafting so well, these are the issues you're going to have. And that's the position the Chiefs find themselves in this offseason.
Yeah. I mean, there's some other ways that they can tinker with this to make it a little bit more palatable, I guess. Like Joe Thuney's contract could get a little adjustment here and there.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. I obviously Mahomes is the way that they have deliberately built it is to make sure that Mahomes's contract doesn't turn out the way that, say, Aaron Rodgers had it in Green Bay. They'll be smart about it, I have no doubt. But I do think that I wouldn't be shocked if you see the extension for Creed before too long, because he plays that non-premium position that you can pay up a little bit for, but in the grand scheme, it doesn't cost you that much. That's one of the things that I think we've shown a willingness to do. I mean, the same way we've done it with Kelsey for years. He's a non-premium position. You're paying for wide receiver 1 level production, but you're paying tight end prices. There's a lot to be said for that. So I'm sure they'll be able to make Creed happen. I think that Trey Smith walks after next year or whenever his contract's up. I think they would be smart to let Bolton walk, as much as I don't want to see him go. If it comes down to him or Drew Tranquill, you pay Drew Tranquill, the $3 million a year as opposed to Nick Bolton, the $7 million. I'm just throwing numbers out there. I don't know what Nick Bolton would be asking for. He's a little younger, but these are the business decisions that unfortunately have to be made. People always talked about Belichick cutting guys, maybe a little early, maybe trading them away a little before they were really done. But that's how they were able to build that dynasty. And, Veach is going to do the same thing. You can take that to the bank.
Mark, what do you think?
I mean, after talking through with you guys, I do think that MVS is likely cut. I mean,
he's also 30. That's a thing that Veach doesn't pay dudes over 30. If Chris Jones gets paid, that's a departure from Veach's established norm.
Yeah. So that seems like the obvious cut there. From what I remember, I think it was right after they beat the Dolphins. The Chiefs beat the Dolphins. There was a tweet or something from Willie Gay saying this was my last game at Arrowhead, or they kind of threw everybody off. We kind of forgot about Willie Gay being in his last year. So I mean, it makes sense because you've got younger linebackers. You got Leo Chenal. You've got Nick Bolton, who's going to need to be paid at some point. Tranquill played really good and seems to like it here, and he's cheap. So I mean, that's there's just some things that are going to have to happen, and you want to keep that defense together because of how good they did this year. So MVS seems to be the logical choice for the cut.
Yeah, I think like the number one thing is seeing what you can do restructure wise, because the whole Chris Jones contract negotiations that prevented them from making a move with DeAndre Hopkins. But if they can maybe be better about the process with some of these deals this offseason, hopefully they can get a lot of work done before free agency starts. You know what? Here's what needs to happen. Patrick Mahomes needs to guarantee everyone a spot on a Coors Light commercial and a State Farm commercial. There. A lot of those guys are making a lot of money now. They can take a little less, but I doubt that happens. Pipe dreams.
Yeah, I think that there's a certain level of that. I think that's also just a testament to the way that Veach has built the roster. He's got a lot of guys that Yeah, he's drafted really well, and he's been able to find stud young players. That we have one of the best problems in the game at this point, which is, hey, we've got all this young talent. How are we going to pay them all? Yeah, we're not, is the short answer to that question. But it's the best problem to have, and it's also established a track record that, you know what, if we do let some of these guys go, I firmly believe that Veach will be able to replace them effectively. I mean, I remember being all sorts of upset when we let Tyrann Mathieu go. I couldn't believe that we didn't re-sign the guy. And then we brought in Justin Reid, and turned out pretty well.
Really well, really underrated too. By the way, here's another guy. And again, we kind of forget about special teams sometimes. Tommy Townsend is set to be a free agent, and it shows on Spot Track his agent is Sports Stars. But I think right before training camp or very early in training camp, he actually changed to Drew Rosenhaus. And obviously the Chiefs and Drew Rosenhaus had a difficult time coming to terms on the Tyreek Hill deal. Now, just because it did not work out with one player doesn't mean it can't work out with another player with the same representative. But Rosenhaus does tend to get top dollar for his guys. And I don't know if you want to give your punter the high. I like Tommy Townsend. He's awesome. But I just don't know if you want that. Then again,
you don't need to pay a punter top dollar when you have a Patrick Mahomes. You just don't.
I agree. But if you get another punter who, like, forget about his ability as a punter. I care a little more about his holding abilities, because with Butker being as great as he was this year, you can't really let that slip away. That's all I'm saying. Listen, I don't think holding is that difficult. Backup quarterbacks used to do it. But the Chiefs have been like very strict about that operation. So that's all I'm saying.
By the way,
that's a good point.
Tommy needs a shout out, because on that Super Bowl longest kick, 57 yards, 58 yards, he saved the day on that one because it was a high snap. So I do give Tommy Townsend some love on that one. In the moment, I didn't realize it, but watching the replay, I was like, wow, Tommy kind of saved the day on that one.
Well, here's what's weird is that bad punt that hit the leg of like a 49ers player. Here's what's so weird about bad punts. They kind of, depending on the direction of where the punt's going, they can kind of benefit you because, and I don't know who that 49ers player was. He did nothing wrong. He doesn't know where the football is. And by the time his teammate, the punt returner, is trying to say something, it's too late to realize what's really going on because he's trying to block whoever. It's just bad punts like tend to really work out well sometimes. You don't see it often, but whenever you do see it, there's like this weird little spin of the football, like just depending the balance, the direction it goes in, it could come back. And obviously the Chiefs finally got a touchdown out of that, which was weird. So I wanted to mention that and completely forgot about it until now, but yeah,
it's
that
like
happened.
It's like a quarterback like Tua who underthrows balls and gets a lot of pass interference calls. Kind of like that a little bit.
That's a very good point.
Good analogy,
Dan.
too.
All right, guys. I'm gonna wrap things up here. Either one of you going to the parade?
Wish I could. Work says otherwise, but God, I'd
Mark?
like to.
Yeah, I got to be up in the studio. We've got some of our other radio stations in our building that are going to be out at the parade, so we're going to be getting calls from them. So I'll be back making sure that it's all going out over the airwaves. And our TV partner is KCTV5, so I think we'll have that in the studio. If there's anything crazy, we can put their sound up from the TV out over the airwaves as well. So we'll have it covered. If you're driving around KC 95.7 FM, 7:10 a.m., depending on where you're at in town, what the signal's like, we'll be covering it.
Okay, good to know. I'll definitely be tuning in. Listen, I do not want to go into the abyss of that. As much as I love downtown and seeing it full, everyone wearing red, I am staying away from that. Just not my thing. Just not my thing. But nonetheless, if you are going, have fun, have a great time. It is Valentine's Day, so if you're single, maybe you can meet the love of your life at a Chiefs Super Bowl parade. Hey, what a great story that would be. All right, my name is Farzin Vasugian. Thank you for downloading and listening to this episode of the Chiefs Zone Podcast. Big thanks to Zach and Mark for joining me on this podcast. I'll be back tomorrow night after the parade. We'll do a podcast then. Until then, Take care. Enjoy. Have fun if you're going to the parade. Talk to you later.